Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2012 film Snow on the Bluff. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I would like to give a special shout out to Shine for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both will be in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Snow on the Bluff is a film that is definitely intended for a certain audience, and I'm not that audience. I am a nerdy white boy who lives in the suburbs. That being said, I thought it was interesting. It's not something that I would say I loved or I would really want to watch again, but I definitely thought it was an interesting watch. Uh, it has a very unique concept. It's a found footage hood movie, and that's definitely something different, and I want to give it credit for that. And there is a certain authenticity and rawness and realness to it that I also did appreciate, but it's barely a movie. It's directed by a director named Damon Russell, and the direction, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It's effective for what he was trying to do. He's trying to make it look as authentic as possible, as if it's just a bunch of random moments from the daily life or uh, scenes from a particular drug dealer's life in the hood and interactions with his friends and his family and so on. So, in that context, the direction is fine because it definitely does look the part. It looks like something you would find on a random VHS just lying on the street in the hood somewhere. But it's not the kind of direction that is really impressive technically. But then again, that's not what's trying to be accomplished here. So it's the kind of direction that I don't have much to say because I can't judge it on the same basis or merit that I would other films because this isn't a traditional kind of movie compared to other films in this genre, in the hood genre. Like I can't compare it to Belly. So what I have is a film that looks amateurish, but that's the point. So I'll give Damon a plus for that. I will give him a good grade, so to speak, for his direction because he did a good job making it look like it's just a bunch of hood movies that were loosely connected together. Then you have a screenplay by Damon Russell and Curtis Snow. And this script is the barest, most faint outline of a plot. But that's intentional. That's by design. It ties into the direction. It's supposed to be, and it's trying to be, a series of loosely connected, supposedly random scenes and moments that are recorded by Curtis after he steals the camera from these college students at the beginning of the movie. So I think that part of the film was definitely scripted. The whole confrontation with the college students who are trying to go to the hood to get some drugs, and then Curtis holds them at gunpoint and then steals their camera. I think any bits of action that are in the film, like the raids and the drive-bys and whatever little bits of shootouts or chases, that's all completely fake. And there's some other moments like the scenes where they're cutting up drugs. That's also completely manufactured. But I think there's a lot of moments in this film, though, that I think are 100% authentic. And there's no actors and there's no real script. So I can't really necessarily give the screenwriters all the praise for what works in this story. And I can't necessarily condemn them for all that doesn't work either, because I don't think they wrote that much. It's just an outline. It's a story about this criminal named Curtis who lives in the hood in Atlanta, who steals a video camera, then just starts recording random moments of his life and recollections and different various uh, points of his life at that very moment, like him visiting his grandmother or when he gets out of jail and so on and so forth. With a few random appearances by various different people throughout the neighborhood. There's also scenes of him trying to sell drugs, and then there's the stuff with the rival gang. But there's just it's just a very faint, uh, bare bones outline of a story, because I think there's a lot of moments in this film where the dialogue is completely improvised, and you can really tell, or it's just people just acting natural, because I don't think a real writer would write, you know what I mean, a million times. And what I mean by that is Curtis, his character, he says, you know what I mean, so many times in this film that you could make a drinking game out of it. I guarantee if you did that, if you took a shot every time he says, you know what I mean, you would be absolutely destroyed and plastered, not even 10 minutes into the movie. Like probably 5 minutes in, you'll be wrecked. And it's crazy because I get it. Maybe that's just how he talks, but man, like so much of his dialogue is just know what I mean, know what I mean, know what I mean. He says it more times than Ernest does in your average Ernest film. I was like, what am I watching? Ernest in the Hood? You better give me my mellow yellow, or I'm gonna bust a cap in your butt. You know what I mean? um, but yeah, it's just one of those scripts that it's hard to really talk about that much. Just like the direction, because it's not a traditional kind of screenplay. But there are some really good quotes in it. There are some good moments when it comes to dialogue. It's not all just filler. There's a scene where the unseen cameraman interviews Curtis while he's sitting on some steps, and he bears his soul to the camera, and he talks about his life in the hood, and he talks about how, yeah, selling drugs, doing all this, it's not good, it's not ideal, but it's there for you. You need some bills paid, you can sell some drugs. And he talks about very valid reasons why people in these communities continue to do these things, because it's reliable. It's more reliable than other forms of income, and it's also something that's easier to do than some other forms of employment. So it becomes, in essence, a crutch for a lot of people. And so does the community around them. Like they don't really know how to handle themselves or really thrive outside of the community. And I think in some ways that's nice because you always have a family, but in other ways it becomes kind of a codependency situation. And I think there are some genuine thoughts here with this script and some of these scenes that deal with some very raw and real emotions and some real shit. And you get that in the finale when Curtis's actions come back to bite him. Okay, you're gonna go to a rival gang, you're gonna hold them hostage basically and steal all their drugs, and you're not gonna expect some kind of retaliation. That's not how things work. And the retaliation, it could lead to somebody you know, somebody you love, getting gunned down. And it wasn't just that. It wasn't just him going in and stealing the drugs. He went a step further because they tried to attack him before he went to prison. And after he got out of jail, he set things up with his fellow friends and gang members to go out and find out where the rival gang lives and shoot one of them. And then, of course, what happens next is, okay, you go out there and you shoot one of them. Well, they're going to come back to your neighborhood and they're going to shoot one of your own. And that's exactly what happened. And now you have a kid who doesn't have a mother. And speaking of that kid, there's a really arresting and just intense scene where Curtis is showing legit sadness over the loss of the mother of his child, which is understandable. But then he cuts it short because he's got to man up. He's got to be a man. Can't show too much emotion. Can't cry. I'm a man, damn it. Men don't do that. Men don't cry. Men are hard. Men are tough. And his son, who's very young, he starts crying because he knows his mom is no longer there. His mom is dead. And Curtis is like, stop crying. What are you doing? Stop crying. Stop being a baby. And I'm like, he is a baby. Like, this kid is literally a baby. He's like, I don't even think he's 5 years old. It's like, stop crying. What are you doing? Stop being a baby. You gotta be tough. I know your mom's gone. She's gone. She's gone. Get over it. And I'm like, whoa. But at the same time, I think it's a good perspective to show because this is probably very real for a lot of people who live in these kind of neighborhoods, who live in this environment. You have to be hard, even if you're a baby, if you want to survive. And that's something that really sticks with you. The thought that even the babies in the hood, they can't cry, they can't show their emotion too much. They got to be tough, they got to be hard. And it also shows the reality in a different way where all of this bravado, all of this king shit, all of this, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be the top dog in my neighborhood. I got to take care of my shit. I got to do this and that. It can lead to you basically being a single dad. You're a single father now, living in the hood. And you have all this extra responsibility now on top of everything else. And for some young men in this type of environment, it's a wake up call. It gets them to get on the right track, get on the right path, grow up, show responsibility. But for others, it leads to more of the same. And the kids, then they see that and they learn from their parent, and then it just kind of continues on. And it's a cycle. It's not just something that is easily uh I would say dealt with, or I'm not going to say eradicated because it never will be, because a lot of the gang activity, a lot of stuff that happens in the hood in particular is due to society. It's due to the pressures of society itself, and how a lot of these people they don't have these opportunities that other people do, or they are very few and far between. So for a lot of them, in order for them to just continue to live another day, you got to keep going on this cycle. And for a good chunk of them, it actually starts very young. So it's not just something where you have grown men doing the gang stuff. You also have kids. And this film shows that, that kind of starts earlier than you might think. And it's not a pretty film by any means. It's bleak. It's pretty depressing, but I think it definitely does provide a good microcosm, a good snapshot of a certain part of society that is shunned by many, and is ignored by a lot of people. It's something that doesn't really have that much of a spotlight put on it, usually, unless it's in some kind of over the top Hollywood hood movie. And this wasn't trying to sugarcoat anything. And I do give it props for that. I really do. Even though like the plot is just barely even there, and the dialogue, other than like a few scenes, is not really much of anything. And the action, when it is there, is not very thrilling or exciting. But there's a certain rawness to this that I think really does ring true. I mean, it led to riots in some of the theaters that the film was showing at, because there were people that thought that the scenes where Curtis was cutting drugs with his kid, they thought that that was real. They thought that he was actually cutting real cocaine in front of a kid, and they flipped out, and people were beside themselves in certain communities and certain places where this film was shown. I thought that was kind of crazy, but then when you think about it, it makes sense, because it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what kind of community you're a part of. Everyone has a line that they draw in the sand. And if it involves kids, a lot of people, even criminals, they have that line. They're like, "No, we're not gonna do anything with kids. The kid, you don't cut drugs in front of kids. That's that's disrespectful. That's uncalled for. That's wrong. All this other gang stuff, that's fine. But cutting cocaine in front of the kids? Hell no." um and I can't really say that much about the acting either. I mean, Curtis Snow, I think there are some moments where his acting is actually really good, but I don't necessarily know if he's even acting. Like the scene where he's sitting on the step and he's talking about gang life and so on and so forth, or the moment when he's showing a lot of tears and emotion when he finds out that the mother of his child is dead. Because I definitely don't think he's doing a lot of acting when he's just shooting the shit with his friends on the streets. But the rest of the cast, I mean, I don't even know how many people were cast in the film who were actual actors. I think so many of the cast members, so to speak, in this movie, they're not even cast members. They're just real people that were just shot on camera. And there is something to that. It definitely does make the film come across even more like an authentic bit of found footage. So does the fact that you really don't have any music, you don't have a score. I think you might have some like rap in the beginning and like at the end. but there's nothing in the actual film itself other than maybe the opening and the ending, like the main credits and the end credits. The cinematography by Pancho Perez, Damon Russell, the editing by Takashi Dosher, like all of that, it's effective and good for a rough looking found footage movie that was cobbled together out of random different sequences that were shot on tape. So I think for the kind of film that Snow on the Bluff is, it's not bad. A lot of ways I kind of look at it as almost a glorified student film. Like it has that kind of vibe to it at times. Like it's very experimental for sure. But I could definitely see some people not really being that big into it because of its lack of a traditional plot and story arcs and character arcs. But I do think it's an interesting counterculture experiment to see unfold because it definitely shows a part of culture that you don't see every day, and it's done in such an authentic fashion that it does have this certain realness to it that I definitely don't feel a lot of films like this have ever replicated. I think it's easily the most realistic hood movie I've ever seen. The other hood films that I've seen, like Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood, and others, they're good, but they're definitely Hollywood. They're definitely not what you would consider like real hood movies, and I think that's why this did get a cult following. I think that's why it spoke to a lot of people who were from those communities, had shared experiences, really were able to relate to it. I'm not able to, like I said, I'm just a white boy from the suburbs, but I was able to relate to it in other ways in terms of, sometimes you got to sacrifice some of your morals or do certain things that you might not necessarily agree with in order to put food on the table and pay those bills. Sometimes life can be really rough and you just got to persevere and move forward, live to fight another day. Uh and sometimes, responsibility can be thrown at you real fast and you might not have an opportunity to prepare for it or plan for it or improve other aspects of your life so you're better set up for it. Sometimes it just falls right in your lap. And I think those are things that pretty much anyone can relate to and connect with. Also camaraderie, with friends and family, that kind of connection, those vibes. I think that's something that definitely speaks to anyone. And that's why I would say if the concept and the idea of the film interests you, I definitely would recommend it. If you're a fan of hood films, I would highly recommend it because it's definitely something you don't see much of. Like when it comes to the hood film genre, like found footage hood movie, like they're really I don't even know if there is another found footage hood movie. This might be the only one. And that's why it's something that's worth a watch. I know a lot of people in the hip hop community they really like the film because of its verisimilitude, and so on, and its realness, and I can definitely get that. I totally understand that. I mean, apparently it was popular enough to get an unofficial sequel with Snoop Dogg, but the saga of that is pretty crazy. The production company who made this movie didn't even get permission for the sequel, so they sued the people who made the sequel. And Curtis Snow was actually in the sequel along with Snoop Dogg, but they were all like, "Hey," the producers were like, "What the hell is this? Like, we didn't give you permission to do this." It was like went direct to video in like 2015. I think there's like some clips of it on YouTube. It's like Snow on the Bluff 2. I think it's like barely even remotely connected to this film as well. So it's the very definition of an unofficial sequel. Really just banking itself on the fact that Snoop Dogg is in it. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about the film except thanks for watching my review. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.